All right, so now that we have a place to code in and we have a version of Python that we can use that's relatively up to date, let's go ahead and write and run our first piece of code. Now we're going to go back and do PyCharm here, and we're just going to go into our main.py file. And in case this is not open, just double click it and it will open up. And we're just going to do, well, the basics of basically any initial programming language when you're learning it, which is going to be printing out hello world in our console here. So what we're going to do is we're going to type in the keyword print, and you'll notice that it gets color coded because my editor here recognizes that this is a Python keyword, and we'll talk about, or you'll see actually in a second what this does. And now I want to type in what it needs to print out. Unfortunately, I can't just type in hello world like this, because these are actually, or in this case, we'll be referencing variables, and we'll learn about variables later on, but really these words themselves aren't defined. And again, you'll see what this means later on, but if we want to have either in a word or in programming we actually call it a string, we need to put quotation marks around it. Now in Python, it doesn't matter if we use single quotation marks, so you can see if I highlight it, it will put quotation marks around it, but of course I could have also just, if I undo this here, I could put the quotation marks beforehand and I can put them afterhand. It doesn't matter if we have single quotation marks or double quotation marks, and we'll learn about strings in a second a little bit more in detail too. The most important thing is just that we have quotation marks around them. In some other programming languages, you know, the single and the double quotation marks have different meanings. In Python, it doesn't matter. The most important thing is that you're consistent. If you use single quotation marks for strings, make sure you always use single quotation marks. If you use double, just make sure you always use double. Just be consistent. So now we have this string here is what it's called, but really it's just, well, it's two words, it's a sentence, it's just a sequence of characters. And this is the value, it contains the value of hello world. And so now we have the most basic Python program, which we'll see in a second is just going to print out this value in here in our console when we run it. So how can we run it? We're going to go to our terminal, and I'm going to type in here Python 3.9. I'm just going to make sure we're going to use the Python 3.9 version that we just installed. And then I'm going to reference this, and if you use tab, it should actually autocomplete main.py. If it doesn't autocomplete, just continue typing a little bit longer until you have enough of the file name there, because it will autocomplete if it's basically the only one that matches that pattern. So in this case, if we type Python 3.9 into our terminal here, and then we type, and then we put in here the name of the file that we want to run afterwards, and we hit enter, then it's going to run it for us. And you can see what happened is we have this hello world printed out. So we've just run our first program. Congratulations. You can see, well, Python, as you can see already, is a very, very user-friendly language, because all that we needed to do to write our first program was just write one single line of code. In most other programming languages, you need a bunch of other stuff around it to kind of have the base skeletal structure there so that you can then run it. But in Python, all we need is that one single line. And although, of course, it's not doing much right now, we can see we've already been able to run and do something. All that we've done right now, though, is just, you know, print this out in our console, but we were able to print out the sentence, and this very short sentence, and you'll notice also the quotation marks are no longer there, and that's again because this value in here is a string, and the contents inside are the value contained inside that string. But again, don't worry about that, because we will have a separate lessons on strings in just a second. But again, congratulations on running your first program. So let's go ahead and learn some more new things with Python.